Hi, my name is Mark Pizik. I'm the database coordinator of the FLAME project at Princeton University. FLAME, it stands for Framing the Late Antique and Medieval Economy. We're a digital humanities project based in special collections at Firestone Library. We digitize information on coins and coin finds in order to provide historians of the late antique and medieval world with tools to pursue data-driven comparative history of these periods. The goal of this video is to provide an introduction to the project, to explain what we do and why we do it. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to walk you through some of the basics. If you wish, you can skip ahead. Timestamps are available in the video description. One way to frame this is through a couple of questions. When did antiquity become medieval? How and why did this happen? So these are big questions and involve long processes across thousands of kilometers. And even the terms, antique, medieval, these are ambiguous. We often mean something like the passing of the Greco-Roman world, and in particular, the end of the pagan empire of Rome. At some point, say the 4th century CE, we reach late antiquity, and sometime after that, antiquity ends. At least by the 8th century CE, we enter the early medieval period. In the meantime, new states emerge. The Byzantine Empire in what used to be the Roman East. The Western Roman Empire is taken over by successor kingdoms, the Vandals, Visigoths, Merovingians, and others. The Sasanian Empire of the Mesopotamian world gives way to the Islamic caliphates of the Umayyad and the Abbasids. These are very big changes. How should we explain them? Historians have typically identified two big possibilities, which we can characterize on a spectrum from change to continuity. At the furthest end of the change spectrum, the shift from late antiquity to the medieval period is thought to be clear-cut, destructive, radical. The unity of the Roman world, characterized by long-distance trade, a fundamental reliance on slave labor, and a unified Roman elite class, gives way to regionalism, the replacement of slavery with serfdom, and the fragmentation of Europe, Africa, and Asia into smaller, more isolated states. Such narratives might focus on endemic local warfare, the destruction of Roman infrastructure, and the poverty of a post-Roman world. In this characterization, the population of several regions is seen as having dropped significantly, perhaps 1/4 or less than what it was at the height of the Roman Empire. On the other end of the spectrum is continuity. Of course, there's a change from antiquity to the medieval period, but supporters of continuity would say that the severity and the pace of this change have been overstated. Certainly, they would note that we must acknowledge that different regions experience such changes differently over time, but that, by and large, most contemporaries did not experience a major break in their lives. So this is a more gradual position, asserting that the radical break between antique and medieval is more a modern illusion than a reality lived by people at the time. And where it existed, it has to be softened with reference to context. Most historians believe something between these two extremes. How do we mediate between change and continuity? What is our evidence for one or the other? Well, traditionally there have been several kinds of evidence. Let's look at two in particular. There is, of course, the literature of this period, histories, chronicles, letters, archives, poems, all the various traces that late antique and medieval people have left for us to read. This is good evidence, of course, but it's incomplete. Very few ancient writers shared our own concerns about history. At least some of the literary evidence points in favor of a change position, as sources written in the 5th to 8th centuries depart from the literature of classical antiquity quite radically. Another source of evidence is archaeological. For example, a famous modern history of this period is based on ceramic evidence. Where such pots travel, where they're found, reveals patterns of trade and hints at the movement of people and goods. When there are fewer pieces of broken pottery to be found, one can infer a smaller population. Ceramic evidence is a major body of evidence for the continuity position, emphasizing regional difference and downplaying disaster or radical change. And what about coins? You might be surprised to learn that coin evidence has not widely been used in such historical accounts. Where it has been, it's been used sporadically or selectively. There are several explanations for this. One is that there are just so many coins. The thing that makes coinage so powerful as evidence also makes it hard to work with: sheer quantity. The literature on coins is also spread across dozens of languages, published in countries on every continent. Coins, then, have been underused on this very big question. One of Flame's goals has been to address this deficit. One reason for optimism is the potential of coins as the subject of digital humanities research. Digital tools help us to master an otherwise daunting body of evidence. The study of coins in its modern form is less than 150 years old. Still, for most of that time, historians have been limited in how much evidence they could analyze and how many coins could be included in their studies. So, what kinds of tools are numismatists using? The first is the database. The relational database has been used since the 1970s to keep track of, to search, and to organize data. And although historians realized this potential very early on, it has not been until the last 15 years that this realization has led to large-scale movements toward data-driven history. The database is now a standard tool for economic and social historians and allows us to include a virtually limitless body of evidence in our analyses. Once you store the data, it is necessary to present it in a way that helps ordinary users do research. Not everyone has the know-how to work with database systems, and so digital numismatic projects take pains to visualize information in ways that are engaging and informative. This may take the form of a digital catalog, which provides well-organized information on those coins. It may take the form of a map, which shows coin distributions through time and space. Numismatists have certainly been visualizing data for decades to make their points, even if it's just the humble bar graph or the pie chart, and so this is an intuitive step for most users. New techniques in digital numismatics might include flowcharts, network visualizations, or 3D models that are scanned from real coins. So we can store and visualize data and information. But how can we share and access these new tools with others? A new development in digital numismatics has been the rise of shared open data frameworks. These are semantic frameworks that essentially agree on the terms and concepts that we use to refer to coins and coin-related things. An important principle here is that computers are not actually very smart at certain tasks. Traditionally, a human is able to match two objects that they know refer to the same thing quite easily. It is much harder for computers, where the name used must be exactly the same. Let's say that we want to match two items that are both from Constantinople, which is today Istanbul. Humans have no problem with this, but what about a computer? Well, it's easy enough if the two are spelled exactly alike, but what if they are off by even one letter? Or what if one is capitalized but the other is not? In strictly computational terms, these are distinct objects. One function of shared open data is to settle on common terms to describe the range of variants that are acceptable to the community of users. So, in addition to Constantinople, a computer system may be told that Constantinople, 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 or Istanbul refer to the same place. The other function of a shared open data framework is to provide a technical way of sharing this information between websites. Without entering into any of the technical details, this is what allows the British Museum to share data with the American Numismatic Society, or with Princeton, without any of them necessarily downloading and maintaining copies of one another's data. So how can we bring these things together? How can the digital humanities and numismatics help to shed light on this important period? That was the question that Flame Chair Alan Stahl asked in 2013, one that he encouraged students of his graduate class to explore at Princeton University. Many of those students went on to explore the question further, including the current director of Flame, Lee Mordecai. The project that they began, Framing the Late Antique and Early Medieval Economy, was the result. Today, Flame's main product, launched in May 2021, is the Circulation Module, a web application that tracks the movement of coins from mint to find spot between 325 to 750 CE. The mints can be as far west as Portugal and as far east as Afghanistan. The finds range even more widely, with coins traveling to Latvia, Japan, Siberia, and Ethiopia. We use a variety of tools to visualize this movement over time. So, with a few clicks, for example, users can quickly find out where the coins that were minted at Constantinople ended up. With another few clicks, they can see where they went within a very specific time range, say 400 to 600 CE. The ability to filter results provides researchers with the powerful tool to organize and analyze data. This has involved the digitization of thousands of traditional numismatic sources, most commonly hoard reports. What are hoard reports? A coin hoard is typically a grouping of coins found together in a common archaeological context, sometimes in a jar or some other container. Reports of their contents are one of the most common kinds of numismatic scholarship. These reports usually tell us when and where the coins were minted. In this way, we can track the movement of coins from production point to deposit point. The Flame community, our contributors, are located on 4 continents. In many cases, individual scholars volunteer to contribute data, but in some cases, we rely on volunteers organized into regional clusters, each led by a coordinator who specializes in the coinage of a particular time and place. In this way, we have covered the territories of South Italy, Turkey, Ukraine, and the Iberian Peninsula. A cluster of researchers now operates out of the University of Hamburg, concentrating mostly on early Islamic coins. Our goal is to produce a free and openly accessible body of data. We allow free export of all Flame data in a variety of formats. We likewise make significant portions of our code available through GitHub. The main problem that we have identified on the project thus far is systematic bias. That is, factors that cause the substance of our database to look different from what we think the actual situation was in antiquity. Some places have many finds, yet we know that they were not major economic regions in the past. Other places have few finds, but we know that they were central to the late antique and early medieval economy. Why might this be? One reason is that this data has simply not yet been entered into our system. In some cases, it exists in print but must still be digitized. In other cases, it has already been digitized but must be imported into Flame's database, which can require a few extra technical steps. This is the case, for example, with data from Germany, Poland, and Israel. We know that it is there, the relevant authorities have agreed to work with us, but we must still implement a technical solution to access the data. Other biases are more elusive. Consider coin biases that are inherent in the coins themselves. Flame has identified many such biases, but we can focus on one here, which we call loss bias. Some coins are more likely to be lost than others, and once lost, they are more likely to stay lost. These are typically low-denomination coins, usually made of bronze or brass. Gold and silver coins, on the other hand, don't get lost as often. This affects the kinds of context we find them in. Bronze coins on excavations, which take slices of ancient life, and gold coins in hoards, which were meant for saving. Other biases are even more difficult to diagnose. Consider Britain. What we know is that the British Isles were a minor and peripheral part of the Atlantic and Mediterranean economies in late antiquity. And yet, England and Wales far outperform any other region for coverage, including regions that were far more important. So what's happening? We are grappling with modern regional biases, which are a product of social, legal, and political factors that are individual to that region. Thus, the British example is affected by the existence of the Portable Antiquities Scheme, a British government initiative that incentivizes reporting by allowing individuals who find antiquities to keep their finds, provided they allow them to be catalogued by cultural specialists first. Such biases are not only difficult to diagnose without significant local knowledge, but they differ from country to country. So how has Flame dealt with this? Well, rather than try to fill in the missing data through some kind of statistical or predictive method, we've decided that the safest and most responsible method is to be explicit and open about biases. There is no fix for such data gaps. Rather, we must live with the problems, being careful to assist users by warning them about where and how their data may be effective. We have built this communicative approach into the application itself. As you can see, opening a coin find tab provides explicit warnings that it may be affected by particular kinds of bias. We open this coin find and see that it is affected by high loss bias, which we described above, meaning it is predominantly composed of bronze coins. We note that this is indeed from an excavation, as we would have predicted. We also see that a regional bias is flagged, as the find is in the UK. Clicking on any of these biases takes the user to a page with more information. Clicking on the PDF hyperlink next to the Britain regional bias opens a page onto something else. Flame decided early on that the best way to explain regional biases was country by country. Thus, any coin find in Britain will link to this essay by Rory Naismith, an expert on British medieval coinage. Other countries and regions will have similar essays written by other regional specialists. In this way, we forefront such complexities to users, allowing them to delve as deeply as they would like into the matter. But are we doomed as historians who wish to solve ancient historical problems? We don't think so. Rather, such work has to be undertaken carefully, with a clear sense of what the evidence will and won't speak to. Consider the case of the silver-gold transition from late antiquity to the medieval period. What was this? Broadly speaking, coinage in Western Eurasia begins as a system based on silver. The Athenian owl, from the 5th century BCE, is probably the most famous example, and despite the addition of gold and bronze denominations over time, the monetary system of the Greeks and Romans continues to be based on silver roughly up to the 4th century CE, when Constantine reforms Rome's coinage onto a gold standard. At that point, the Roman West, Byzantine East, and eventually the early Islamic states functioned with gold as a monetary base, while the Sasanian Empire to the east still used silver. The precise reason for this switch is not known, though historians have some suspicions. If you subscribe to the monetarist position, this has implications for the economic history of this period. What is the monetarist position? It begins with the premise that the availability of money affects the possibility of economic activity. Without adequate supplies of money, the economy is choked. Consider a villager who needs to buy a chicken. She lives in a gold coinage world. What are her options? High-value gold coins are relatively scarce, but let's say she has one. She would be a fool to buy a single chicken with it. It's simply too valuable. To get full value, she would have to buy several hundred chickens. She can either break apart the gold coin, which is tricky, or she could buy other things from the seller as well, if they have them. Alternatively, she could barter instead of using her gold coin. The situation is considerably helped by the existence of bronze coinage, which supplemented the monetary base of gold in the late Roman and Byzantine worlds. Another option is to include silver in the mix as well. But this illustrates the principle. So the switch from silver to gold was a major event, and in fact, the re-emergence of silver in the Latin West should also be considered important. This happened under the successor kingdoms, like the Merovingians and Anglo-Saxons, roughly in the 7th century CE, with the Carolingian penny becoming the new Western standard. At the same time, the Byzantine and Islamic states continued to operate with several metals, but predominantly with gold as the standard of value. The exception is in the Eastern Islamic states, where they continued to use silver as the Sasanians had before them. This phenomenon is big in historical terms, and requires comparison of thousands of individual historical observations. Historians of this period have observed it informally, but Flame helps to show that a concrete, detailed history of the phenomenon can be written. We can gather and visualize evidence, not only showing it to be true, but better tracking the process over time. When did it happen? Where? The breadth of the phenomenon means that the biases that we have identified, while not negligible, are not as relevant to the argument. They are overwhelmed by its scope. To demonstrate how this might work, let's try to see how this phenomenon looks using the Flame circulation module. So, this is the default view when you open the website, with clusters of coin finds shown as orange and red bubbles on the map. Right now, we are displaying all coin finds. We will want to use data filters to limit our search only to the areas, time periods, and metals that interest us. We should expect to see a notable drop-off in gold usage in northwestern Europe in the 7th and 8th centuries, and simultaneously to see an increase in silver usage. We can begin by highlighting that geographic region using our custom region drawing tool. As you can see, we draw the points and complete the polygon to filter only for those finds that lie within it. We should then set the metal filter to gold. And let's set the date filter while we're at it. We will look at the period from 600 to 750 CE, when scholars broadly think that this shift took place. We set our date precision to loose to avoid excluding coins that cannot be dated extremely closely, since this isn't possible for many coins in this region. So the expectation is a healthy number of gold coins early in this period. When we run this search, we see that 231 finds are present for the region in this period. They lie mostly in France. Now, is this a lot of coin finds? Well, let's see. Our next search should show a distinct drop in results. The question will be how much. We enter new dates to match the second half of this time span, up to 750 CE. And indeed, we see a very significant drop. Only 8 finds in this later period have any gold coins at all, 7 in France and 1 in Britain. Gold seems to have gone out of fashion, confirming the first half of the gold-silver transition theory. But what about the second half? Does silver take its place? Let's see. We enter the new metal into the filter field, replacing the lower date range, and search again. And here we have 8 coin finds with silver in them. This is what we expected, a world within which very little silver circulates. The last observation that we need is to see whether this number increases significantly in the subsequent time period. So we enter the final date range, run the search, and find 74 coin finds with silver coinage, a roughly 7-fold increase in silver coin circulation over that period. This represents an overall decline in coin find numbers, but a vast increase in silver overall. So it turns out that the impression that scholars have formed of this period, that the northwestern European states shift from gold to silver, is supported by the evidence in flame. And we now have a more precise way of tracking the geographical and chronological dimensions of this shift. Phenomena such as the gold-silver transition can serve as the basis for discussion of other changes during this period, and with flame as the basis for this kind of work, we are better positioned to understand the dynamics at play in this crucial period in world history.